Lisa Washington drove her black sedan through the quiet streets of Millbrook. The small town looked peaceful in the afternoon sun. She had just finished a long meeting at the military base 2 hours away. The meeting was classified and very important. Lisa could not tell anyone what they talked about. Not even her family knew the real nature of her work. She was tired but happy. The mission she had completed last month went better than anyone expected. Her superiors were very pleased with her work. Lisa had served in the military for 15 years. She was now a captain and had many medals for her brave service. Her uniform jacket in the back seat had ribbons and badges that showed her achievements. The radio played soft music as she drove. Lisa thought about going home to her apartment. She wanted to take a hot shower and rest. Tomorrow she would return to her regular duties at the base. Or so she thought. In her rearview mirror she saw red and blue lights flashing. A police car was behind her. Lisa looked at her speedometer. She was driving exactly at the speed limit. She had not broken any traffic laws. Lisa pulled over to the side of the road and waited. 2 police officers got out of their car. They walked slowly toward her vehicle. The first officer was tall with short brown hair. His name tag said Burke. The second officer was shorter and had a round face. His name tag said Hayes. Both men looked serious and unfriendly. Officer Burke came to her window. Lisa rolled it down and smiled politely. She knew how to handle police stops. Her military training taught her to stay calm and follow procedures. "Good afternoon, officer," Lisa said. "Was I speeding?" Burke did not smile back. He looked at her with cold eyes. "License and registration," he said in a harsh voice. Lisa reached for her purse carefully. She moved slowly so the officers would not feel threatened. She pulled out her driver's license and registration papers. She also took out her military identification card. "Here you go," she said, handing the documents to Burke. "I'm Captain Lisa Washington, United States Army." Burke looked at the papers but did not seem impressed. He studied her military ID for a long time. Hayes walked around to the other side of her car and peered through the windows. "What are you doing in Millbrook?" Burke asked. "I was visiting the base nearby," Lisa replied honestly. "I'm driving home now." "What kind of business did you have there?" Hayes asked from the other side of the car. Lisa knew she could not give details about her classified work. "Military business," she said simply. "I'm an active duty officer." Burke handed her documents to Hayes. They both examined the military ID carefully. They whispered to each other, but Lisa could not hear what they said. "This ID looks fake," Burke said suddenly. Lisa was shocked. "Excuse me, officer? That's my official military identification. I assure you it's real." "A lot of people try to fake military IDs these days," Hayes said. "We've seen it before." Lisa remained calm, but she felt worried. Something was wrong with this situation. These officers were not treating her with normal respect. They seemed suspicious of her for no good reason. "You can call the base to verify my identity," Lisa offered. "My commanding officer will confirm who I am." Burke shook his head. "We'll handle this our way. Step out of the vehicle, please." "Is there a problem, officer? I haven't done anything wrong." "Step out of the vehicle now," Burke repeated, his voice getting louder. Lisa knew her rights, but she also knew that arguing with police officers could make things worse. She opened her door and stepped out slowly. She kept her hands visible at all times. "Is this really necessary?" Lisa asked. "I'm a decorated military officer. I've served my country for 15 years. Hayes laughed in a mean way. "Sure you have. And I'm a general." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She realized what was happening. These officers were treating her badly because of her race. She had faced racism before, but never while in uniform or showing her military credentials. "I want to speak to your supervisor," Lisa said firmly but politely. "Our supervisor isn't here right now," Burke said. "Turn around and put your hands on the car." "Am I under arrest?" "What are the charges?" "You're being detained for suspicious activity and possible fraud," Hayes said. Lisa could not believe what she was hearing. She had done nothing wrong. She was a respected military officer driving home from a work meeting. But these 2 officers were treating her like a criminal. She placed her hands on the car as ordered. Burke roughly searched her pockets while Hayes watched. They found her wallet, phone, and car keys. Nothing suspicious or illegal. "Look at this car," Hayes said to his partner. "Pretty expensive for someone who claims to be in the Army." Lisa had bought her car with money she saved from her military salary and deployment bonuses. She had every right to own a nice vehicle, but she could see that these officers had already made up their minds about her. Burke pulled out handcuffs. "You're coming with us to the station." "This is completely wrong," Lisa said. "I demand to call my commanding officer." "You'll get your phone call at the station," Burke said as he put the handcuffs on her wrists. Lisa felt the cold metal around her wrists. She had never been arrested before, not even a parking ticket. Her military record was perfect. But now she was being handcuffed like a common criminal. The officers walked her to their police car. Other drivers slowed down to watch as they put her in the back seat. Lisa felt embarrassed and angry. She knew this was wrong, but she also knew she had to stay calm and follow the law. As they drove toward the police station, Lisa thought about her family. Her parents had taught her to always respect authority. But what happened when authority did not respect her? She thought about her military oath to protect and defend the Constitution. That same Constitution was supposed to protect her from this kind of treatment. Lisa did not know that her detention would soon trigger events that would shake this small town to its core. She did not know that powerful people were already being notified of her situation. All she knew was that she was an innocent woman being treated badly because of the color of her skin. The police car pulled into the station parking lot. Lisa took a deep breath and prepared for whatever would come next. The Millbrook police station was small and old. Paint peeled from the walls and the floors creaked when people walked on them. Officers Burke and Hayes led Lisa through the front door. Her handcuffs made a clinking sound with each step. Behind the front desk sat Sergeant Pete Morris. He was a heavy man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had worked at this station for 20 years. Morris looked up when they entered. "What do we have here?" Morris asked. "Suspicious person with fake military ID," Burke said. He placed Lisa's documents on the desk. "Claims to be some kind of army captain." Morris picked up the military identification card. He studied it carefully, turning it over in his hands. "Looks pretty real to me," he said. "That's what they want you to think," Hayes said. "These fake IDs are getting better every year." Lisa stood quietly between the two officers. She knew that speaking up might make things worse, but she also knew she had to defend herself. "Sergeant Morris," she said respectfully, "I am Captain Lisa Washington, United States Army. That identification is completely real. You can verify it by calling my base." Morris looked at her for a long moment. He seemed less hostile than the two officers who brought her in. "What's your unit?" he asked. "I cannot give you specific details about my assignment," Lisa replied. "Much of my work is classified. But you can contact Colonel David Brown at Fort Henderson. He will confirm my identity." Burke shook his head. "She's been saying that all afternoon. Just trying to confuse us with military talk." Morris frowned. He had served in the Army himself many years ago. He knew that real military officers took their security seriously. They would not give away classified information easily. "Why don't we just make the phone call?" Morris suggested. Hayes stepped closer to the desk. "Sarge, we've seen this before. People pretend to be military to get special treatment. She was driving an expensive car through our town. Something doesn't add up." Lisa felt frustration building inside her. These men were judging her based on their own prejudices. They could not believe that a black woman could be a successful military officer with a nice car. "I earned my rank through 15 years of dedicated service," Lisa said. "I have been deployed to dangerous places to serve my country. I have never been arrested or even given a traffic ticket. This treatment is completely unjustified." Morris seemed uncertain. He looked back and forth between Lisa and the two officers. Finally, he made his decision. "Put her in holding cell number 2, he told Burke and Hayes. "We'll sort this out later." Lisa's heart sank. She had hoped that Morris would be more reasonable than the other officers, but he was choosing to go along with their mistake. Burke and Hayes led her down a narrow hallway. The holding cells were small and dirty. Cell number 2 had a metal bench and a toilet. The walls were covered with scratches and graffiti from previous prisoners. They removed her handcuffs and pushed her into the cell. The metal door slammed shut with a loud clang. Lisa was now officially a prisoner. She sat on the cold metal bench and tried to stay calm. Her military training had taught her how to handle difficult situations. She knew that panicking would not help. She needed to think clearly and find a way out of this mess. What Lisa did not know was that her detention had already triggered something much bigger than a small-town police mistake. Hidden inside her body was a tiny device that most people did not know existed. It was smaller than a grain of rice and completely invisible to normal medical scans. The device was called a biometric security monitor. Only a few hundred people in the entire world had them. They were given to military personnel who worked on the most sensitive and important projects, the kind of projects that involved national security at the highest levels. Lisa's work was so classified that even her family did not know what she really did. They thought she was just a regular army officer who worked on computers and communications. They had no idea that she was involved in something that could change the future of humanity. The tiny device monitored her vital signs, location, and stress levels at all times. It was connected to a satellite network that reported to a special government facility. When Lisa was handcuffed and detained without proper authorization, the device automatically sent an emergency signal. At that very moment, computers at the Federal Bureau of Investigation were receiving alerts about Lisa's situation. Special agents who dealt with the most sensitive cases were being notified. Phone calls were being made to very important people in Washington, but Lisa knew none of this as she sat in her cell. She only knew that she was innocent and being treated unfairly. She thought about her parents and how disappointed they would be. She thought about her military career and whether this incident would damage her reputation. Officer Hayes walked by her cell and looked in through the bars. "Comfortable in there?" he asked with a mean smile. Lisa did not respond. She knew that engaging with him would only make things worse. "My partner is writing up the report now," Hayes continued. "Fraud, impersonating a military officer, suspicious activity. You're looking at serious charges." "Those charges are false and you know it," Lisa said quietly. Hayes laughed. "That's what they all say. But we have ways of dealing with troublemakers who come into our town." After Hayes left, Lisa closed her eyes and tried to meditate. Her military training included techniques for staying calm under pressure. She breathed slowly and deeply, trying to center herself. She thought about the meeting she had attended earlier that day. The information discussed in that room was more important than anyone in this police station could imagine. Her work was vital to national security, and possibly the future of the human race. If only these officers knew the truth about who they had arrested. If only they knew that their small-minded prejudice was about to bring down the full weight of the federal government on their heads. But Lisa could not tell them the truth. Her security clearance was so high that even revealing the general nature of her work could be considered treason. She was trapped by the very secrecy that made her work so important. Time passed slowly in the holding cell. Lisa could hear the officers talking and laughing in the main room. They seemed to think this was all very funny. They had no idea that their lives were about to change forever. Outside the police station, unmarked government vehicles were already heading toward Millbrook. 300 miles away in Washington, Agent Carol Jang was finishing her coffee when her computer screen flashed red. The emergency alert made a sharp beeping sound that cut through the quiet office. Carol immediately stopped what she was doing and focused on her screen. The message was marked with the highest security classification. Only 12 people in the entire government had clearance to read these alerts. Carol was one of them because she worked for a very special division of the FBI that most people did not know existed. The Extraterrestrial Affairs Division was created 5 years ago after humanity made first contact with intelligent alien life. The public did not know about aliens yet. The government was keeping it secret while they learned more about these new species and decided how to handle the situation. Carol read the alert message quickly. A level alpha asset had been detained without authorization. The asset's biometric monitor was sending distress signals. Location was Millbrook Police Station in rural Georgia. Carol's blood ran cold when she saw the name. Captain Lisa Washington was not just any level alpha asset. She was the most important person in the entire First Contact program. Lisa was humanity's primary liaison with the alien coalition that was currently deciding whether Earth was ready to join the galactic community. Carol grabbed her secure phone and called her supervisor immediately. Director Frank Adams answered on the first ring. "Sir, we have a code red situation," Carol said without wasting time on greetings. "Captain Washington has been detained by local law enforcement." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Director Adams said words that Carol had never heard him say before. Words that meant this situation was more serious than anything they had ever dealt with. Activate Protocol 7, Adam said. Full federal response. I want a tactical team mobilized within 15 minutes. Protocol 7 was the emergency response plan for protecting their most valuable assets. It involved multiple federal agencies and enough firepower to handle a small war. Carol had trained for this scenario but never thought she would actually need to use it. She immediately started making phone calls. The first call went to the FBI Tactical Response Team. The second call went to the Department of Defense. The third call went to Homeland Security. Within minutes, dozens of federal agents and military personnel were being pulled from their regular duties. Carol looked at her computer screen again. The biometric data showed that Lisa was under extreme stress but not physically injured. Her heart rate was elevated and her location had not changed for 30 minutes. She was definitely being held against her will. What worried Carol most was the timing. Lisa had just returned from the most important diplomatic mission in human history. 3 alien species had sent representatives to meet with her secretly. They were evaluating whether humanity was ready to learn about the greater galactic community. The aliens were particularly concerned about human society's problems with racism, violence, and inequality. They had studied Earth's history and were not sure if humans could handle the responsibilities that came with advanced technology and galactic citizenship. Lisa's job was to convince them that humanity was worth the risk. She had spent weeks in secret negotiations, showing the aliens examples of human courage, compassion, and progress. Her own life story was a perfect example of how humans could overcome prejudice and achieve great things. Now that same woman was sitting in a jail cell because of the exact kind of racism that worried the aliens most. Carol knew that this incident could destroy everything they had worked for. If the aliens learned that their primary human contact was being mistreated because of her race, they might decide that humanity was not ready for galactic contact. Carol gathered her gear and headed for the government helicopter that was already warming up on the roof. The flight to Millbrook would take 2 hours. She hoped that would be fast enough to prevent a complete disaster. As her helicopter lifted off from Washington, Carol used her secure communication system to contact the alien liaison team. She needed to let them know what was happening and try to control the damage. The voice that answered spoke perfect English but had a slightly musical quality that reminded Carol she was talking to someone from another world. Agent Zhang, we were not expecting communication at this time. We have a situation involving Captain Washington, Carol said carefully. She has been temporarily detained by local authorities who do not understand her importance. We are moving to resolve the situation immediately. There was a long pause. Carol could hear strange background sounds that she assumed came from the alien ship hidden somewhere in Earth's orbit. This is concerning, the alien voice finally said. We will monitor the situation closely. If Captain Washington is being mistreated because of her genetic characteristics, it will affect our evaluation of human society. Carol felt her stomach drop. The aliens were already watching. They would see exactly how this situation was handled. If the Millbrook police continued to treat Lisa badly, it could convince the aliens that humans were not ready for galactic contact. We understand the importance of this situation, Carol said. Our response will demonstrate humanity's commitment to justice and equality. We hope so, the alien replied. Captain Washington has convinced us that your species has great potential, but this incident suggests that some humans still judge others based on physical appearance rather than character and ability. The communication ended, leaving Carol alone with her thoughts as the helicopter flew toward Georgia. She knew that the next few hours would determine humanity's future among the stars. Meanwhile, other federal agents were gathering more information about the Millbrook Police Department. What they found was not encouraging. There had been multiple complaints about racial bias and excessive force over the years. Officers Burke and Hayes had several incidents in their files. The department had refused to participate in federal bias training programs. Carol realized that this was not just a case of mistaken identity. This was exactly the kind of systematic racism that the aliens were worried about. The fact that it was happening to their most important human ally made it even worse. She checked her watch. 1 hour until they reached Millbrook. Lisa had now been in custody for over an hour. Every minute that passed was another minute of evidence that humanity still had serious problems with treating all people fairly. Carol's phone rang with updates from the tactical team. They were 30 minutes behind her but coming with overwhelming force. Local authorities would have no choice but to release Lisa immediately, but Carol knew that the damage might already be done. The aliens were watching and judging. Humanity's chance to join the galactic community might depend on how well they handled this crisis. The helicopter flew through the afternoon sky toward a small town that had no idea it was about to become the center of the most important law enforcement operation in human history. Back at the Millbrook police station, Officer Burke sat at his computer trying to write the arrest report. The problem was that he could not think of any real crimes that Lisa had committed. Driving while black was not actually illegal, even though Burke and his partner Hayes often treated it that way. Burke started typing slowly. He wrote that Lisa was driving suspiciously through their town. He wrote that her military identification appeared to be fake. He wrote that she was uncooperative and resistant during the traffic stop. All of these things were lies, but Burke hoped they would be enough to justify the arrest. Hayes walked over and read the report over Burke's shoulder. "That's not going to be enough," he said. "We need something more serious to make this stick." Burke deleted what he had written and started over. This time he added that Lisa had been speeding and driving erratically. He wrote that she smelled like alcohol and appeared to be under the influence. He wrote that she made threatening statements toward the officers. None of these things had actually happened, but Burke knew that people usually believed police officers over criminals. He figured that Lisa's word against theirs would not carry much weight in court. "What about the car?" Hayes asked. "We should search it for drugs or weapons," Burke nodded. "Good idea. If we find anything suspicious, it will make our case much stronger." The two officers went outside to Lisa's car, which was still parked where they had left it during the traffic stop. They put on latex gloves and began searching through her belongings. Lisa's car was extremely clean and well organized. Her military training showed in everything she did. The officers found registration papers, insurance documents, and a small emergency kit in the glove compartment. Everything was perfectly legal and properly maintained. In the back seat, they found Lisa's military dress uniform hanging in a protective bag. The uniform had numerous ribbons and medals that showed her distinguished service record. Burke and Hayes did not understand what most of the decorations meant, but they could tell that Lisa was highly decorated. "Look at all these fake medals," Hayes said, even though he suspected they were real. She really went all out with this military fantasy. They continued searching but found nothing illegal or even suspicious. Lisa's car contained exactly what anyone would expect from a responsible military officer. Naps, bottled water, a first aid kit, and some healthy snacks. Burke was getting frustrated. He needed to find something that would justify their actions. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small plastic bag containing white powder. It was evidence from an old drug case that had been closed months ago. Burke had kept it for situations exactly like this one. "Hayes, look what I found under the driver's seat," Burke said loudly, holding up the bag. Hayes understood immediately what his partner was doing. They had planted evidence before when they needed to make charges stick against people they did not like. It was illegal and wrong, but they had never been caught. Well, Hayes said in a fake, surprised voice. "Looks like our military hero has a drug problem." What Burke and Hayes did not know was that their every move was being recorded. The federal surveillance system that had been triggered by Lisa's detention was now monitoring the entire area around Millbrook. Satellites in orbit were taking high-resolution photographs. Electronic listening devices were recording their conversations. Inside the police station, Sergeant Morris was starting to feel worried. He had tried calling the military base to verify Lisa's identity, but nobody would give him information over the phone. They said they needed written authorization and proper security clearances. Morris had been a police officer long enough to recognize when something was not normal. Real criminals usually got angry and made threats when they were arrested. Lisa had remained calm and polite throughout the entire process. She spoke like someone with education and training. Her paperwork all looked legitimate. He walked back to the holding cells to check on her. Lisa was sitting quietly on the metal bench with her eyes closed. She looked like she was meditating or praying. When she heard his footsteps, she opened her eyes and looked at him. "Sergeant Morris," she said respectfully, "I want you to know that I hold no personal anger toward you or your officers. I understand that you are trying to do your job, but I hope you will reconsider the situation before it goes too far." Morris was surprised by her words. Most people in holding cells cursed at him and demanded to be released immediately. Lisa was speaking to him like a fellow professional who understood difficult situations. "Ma'am, if you really are who you say you are, this will all get sorted out soon," Morris said. "I am exactly who I say I am," Lisa replied. "But I'm concerned that this incident may have consequences that none of us can predict. Sometimes small actions can lead to very big problems." Morris did not understand what she meant, but something in her voice made him nervous. Lisa spoke like someone who knew about important things that he did not understand. She did not sound like a criminal or a fraud. She sounded like someone with real authority and responsibility. Outside, Burke and Hayes finished planting the evidence in Lisa's car. They locked the vehicle and returned to the station to update their report. Burke added details about finding illegal drugs during their search. He wrote that this discovery proved Lisa was a criminal trying to hide her illegal activities behind a fake military identity. The two officers felt confident that their story would hold up in court. They had done this kind of thing before and gotten away with it. Local judges usually trusted police testimony over civilian claims. Burke and Hayes figured this case would be no different. What they did not realize was that federal agents were already reviewing the surveillance footage of their evidence planting. High-tech cameras had recorded them putting the drugs in Lisa's car. Digital analysis could prove that the evidence bag had been in Burke's pocket before he found it under the driver's seat. At FBI headquarters, Agent Carol Jong was receiving real-time updates about the situation. She watched in horror as the local officers planted evidence and falsified reports. What had started as a case of racial profiling was now becoming a serious federal crime. Carol knew that the aliens were still monitoring the situation. They would see how the human justice system handled police corruption and evidence tampering. If the system failed to hold these officers accountable, it would confirm the aliens' worst fears about human society. The helicopter carrying federal agents was now only 30 minutes away from Millbrook. Soon, Burke and Hayes would discover that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. They thought they were dealing with just another Blackie, woman who could be bullied and framed without consequences. They had no idea that they had just committed federal crimes against someone who was vital to humanity's future among the stars. Their racist actions and criminal behavior were about to trigger a response that would change their lives forever. The sound of helicopters filled the air above Millbrook at exactly 3:30 in the afternoon. Officer Hayes was drinking coffee in the break room when he heard the noise. He walked to the window and looked up at the sky. 3 black helicopters were circling the police station like birds of prey. "Burke, you need to see this," Hayes called to his partner. Burke joined him at the window. More helicopters were arriving every minute. Some landed in the empty lot across the street. Others continued circling overhead. Men and women in dark suits and tactical gear began pouring out of the aircraft. "What the hell is going on?" Burke asked, but he already felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. Sergeant Morris came running into the break room. His face was pale and his hands were shaking. "There are federal agents surrounding our building," he said. "FBI, DEA, Homeland Security, and people I don't even recognize." Outside, Agent Carol Jang stepped out of the lead helicopter before it had even finished landing. She wore a bulletproof vest over her business suit and carried a thick folder of official documents. Behind her came a team of federal agents armed with assault rifles and wearing full tactical gear. Carol looked at the small police station with disgust. This pathetic little building was about to become the center of the most important law enforcement operation in human history. The actions of a few racist cops in this backwater town could determine whether humanity was worthy of joining the galactic community. She activated her radio and spoke to the tactical team leaders. "Secure the perimeter, but do not engage unless threatened. This is a federal operation now. No one enters or leaves without my authorization." Carol walked toward the front door of the police station. The federal agents formed a protective formation around her. She could see faces in the windows staring out in shock and fear. Good, she thought. They should be afraid. Inside the station, Sergeant Morris was trying to figure out what to do. He had never seen so many federal agents in one place. Whatever was happening, it was much bigger than anything Millbrook had ever dealt with before. The front door opened and Carol Jong walked in. She moved with the confidence of someone who had absolute authority. The federal agents behind her spread out through the building, securing every room and exit. "I'm Agent Carol Jang, Federal Bureau of Investigation," she announced in a loud, clear voice. This facility is now under federal jurisdiction. All personnel will remain calm and follow instructions. Morris stepped forward nervously. Agent Zhang, I'm Sergeant Morris. Can you tell me what this is about? Carol opened her folder and pulled out an official document with multiple signatures and seals. This is a federal warrant for the immediate release of Captain Lisa Washington. Where is she being held? Morris felt his knees go weak. The military identification had been real after all. They had arrested an actual Army captain. She's in holding cell number 2, he said quietly. Take me to her immediately, Carol ordered. As they walked toward the holding cells, Carol continued talking. Captain Washington is under federal protection due to her involvement in classified national security operations. Her unauthorized detention constitutes a serious breach of federal law. They reached the holding cell where Lisa sat calmly on the metal bench. When she saw Agent Zhang, Lisa stood and smiled slightly. She had been expecting this moment. Agent Zhang, Lisa said formally, I assume my monitoring system activated properly. Yes, Captain, Carol replied as she unlocked the cell door. We received your emergency signal and responded immediately. Are you injured? No physical injuries, Lisa said as she stepped out of the cell. But the treatment I received here demonstrates exactly the kind of problems we discussed in our recent briefings. Carol understood what Lisa meant. The aliens were watching to see how humans treated each other. This incident would be seen as proof that human society still had serious problems with racism and injustice. They walked back toward the main room where Officers Burke and Hayes were standing with terrified expressions. When Burke saw Lisa walking free, he realized that everything was about to fall apart. Carol faced the two officers with cold anger in her eyes. Officers Burke and Hayes, you are under federal investigation for civil rights violations, false imprisonment, and evidence tampering. Evidence tampering? Burke tried to sound innocent. We didn't tamper with any evidence. Carol pulled out a tablet computer and showed them surveillance footage of Burke planting drugs in Lisa's car. The high-definition video clearly showed every detail of their criminal activity. This footage was recorded by federal surveillance systems, Carol said. We have complete documentation of your illegal actions. Hayes looked at the video in shock. He had no idea that federal agents were watching them. How did you get this? Captain Washington's security clearance is so high that her detention automatically triggered comprehensive surveillance of this entire area, Carol explained. Every word you have spoken and every action you have taken has been recorded and analyzed. Burke felt sick to his stomach. Not only had they arrested someone important, but they had been caught planting evidence on camera. Their careers were over. They might go to prison. More federal agents entered the building. They carried boxes of evidence collection equipment and began photographing everything. The entire police station was being treated as a crime scene. Chief of Police Robert Miller arrived at the station to find it surrounded by federal agents. Miller had been fishing at the lake when he got the emergency call. He could not believe what he was seeing. Carol Zhang met him in the parking lot and handed him another official document. Chief Miller, your department is now under federal investigation. We have evidence of systematic civil rights violations and criminal behavior by your officers. Miller read the document with growing horror. Federal investigators would examine every case his department had handled for the past 5 years. They would interview every person who had been arrested or detained. Any pattern of racial bias or abuse would be prosecuted to the full extent of federal law. Agent Zhang, I had no idea this was happening, Miller said desperately. If my officers did something wrong, we can handle it internally. This is far beyond internal discipline, Carol replied. Your officers detained a person whose work is vital to national security. They then committed federal crimes by planting evidence and filing false reports. This is now a matter for federal courts. Inside the station, Lisa was being examined by a federal medical team to document any injuries or trauma from her detention. She also spoke with FBI agents who recorded her detailed account of everything that had happened. The officers showed clear racial bias from the moment they stopped me, Lisa told the investigators. They refused to accept my legitimate identification and treated me as a criminal despite my spotless record and military service. The federal agents nodded and took careful notes. This case would become a textbook example of how not to conduct law enforcement. Every detail would be preserved as evidence and later used for training purposes. Outside, news reporters were beginning to arrive after hearing about the massive federal response. The story of racist cops detaining a decorated military officer would soon make headlines across the country. But the biggest audience was watching from somewhere high above Earth's atmosphere. Alien observers were analyzing every aspect of how human authorities handled this crisis. Their evaluation would determine whether humanity was ready to learn about the greater universe beyond their planet. As federal agents secured the Millbrook police station, Agent Carol Zhang led Lisa Washington to a secure mobile command center that had been set up in the parking lot. The trailer was filled with advanced communication, equipment and classified computers that could connect directly to the most sensitive government networks. Carol closed the door behind them and activated security measures that would prevent anyone from listening to their conversation. What they were about to discuss was more classified than anything the local officers could imagine. "Captain Washington, we need to assess the potential damage from this incident," Carol said as she sat down at a secure workstation. The timing could not have been worse. Lisa nodded grimly. She understood exactly what Carol meant. The Kepler Coalition representatives are probably already aware of what happened. Their monitoring systems are very advanced. Carol typed commands into her computer and established a secure connection to a facility that officially did not exist. On the screen appeared Director Frank Adams, the head of the Extraterrestrial Affairs Division. "Captain Washington, are you injured?" Adams asked immediately. "No, sir," Lisa replied. "But I'm concerned about how this incident will affect our ongoing negotiations." Adams looked tired and worried. He had spent the last 2 hours in emergency meetings with the highest levels of government. "The President has been briefed on the situation. She is personally monitoring how we handle this crisis." What Adams did not say out loud was that the President was also in secret communication with alien representatives. The first contact protocols required regular updates about humanity's progress towards social equality and justice. This incident was exactly the kind of setback that could derail years of careful diplomacy. Lisa had been chosen as humanity's primary alien liaison for very specific reasons. She was brilliant, brave, and represented the best of human potential. Her own life story showed how people could overcome prejudice and achieve greatness through hard work and dedication. The aliens had studied human history extensively before making contact. They were deeply concerned about humanity's long record of violence, racism, and inequality. Many species in the galactic community had voted against contact with Earth because they believed humans were not evolved enough to handle advanced technology responsibly. Lisa's job was to prove them wrong. Over the past year, she had participated in dozens of secret meetings with alien representatives. She had shown them examples of human art, music, and literature. She had explained human concepts of justice, democracy, and individual rights. Most importantly, she had demonstrated through her own example that humans could grow beyond their primitive prejudices. Lisa was living proof that people should be judged by their character and achievements rather than their appearance. "The irony is almost too much to bear," Lisa said to Carol and Adams. "I spend months convincing aliens that humanity has moved beyond racism, and then I get arrested by racist cops for driving while black." Carol accessed the surveillance data from the alien monitoring systems that were secretly observing. Earth, the Kepler Coalition, had been watching the entire incident unfold. Their advanced technology could monitor human communications and activities from their ships hidden in Earth's outer atmosphere. "They recorded everything," Carol said as she reviewed the data. "The traffic stop, the detention, the evidence planting, all of it." Adams shook his head in frustration. Months of careful diplomacy could be destroyed by the actions of 2 ignorant police officers in a small Georgia town. The Kepler Coalition consisted of 3 alien species that had formed an alliance millions of years ago. They were peaceful, advanced, and committed to helping younger civilizations develop responsibly. But they were also very cautious about which species they allowed to join the galactic community. Earth had been under observation for over 50 years before the aliens decided to make limited contact. They had watched humanity's progress through the civil rights movement, the end of apartheid, and other advances in social justice. But they had also seen wars, genocide, and continued racism in many parts of the world. The coalition's policy was simple. Species that could not treat their own members fairly could not be trusted with advanced technology or knowledge about other worlds. Too many civilizations had destroyed themselves or threatened others after gaining access to powerful tools before. They were morally ready. Lisa's phone buzzed with an incoming message on a special encrypted channel that only she and a few other people could access. The message was from Commander Zara, the lead alien representative. Captain Washington, we have observed the recent events involving your detention. We request an immediate conference to discuss the implications. Lisa showed the message to Carol and Adams. This was the moment they had all been dreading. The aliens wanted answers about why their primary human contact had been treated so badly by her own people. Set up the secure communication link, Adams ordered. We need to do damage control immediately. Carol activated the most advanced communication system on Earth. It could establish quantum-encrypted connections with alien ships anywhere in the solar system. The technology had been shared by the aliens as a gesture of good faith during early contact negotiations. The screen flickered and then showed the interior of an alien vessel. Commander Zara appeared on the display. She looked mostly human, but with subtle differences that marked her as a member of the Altarian species. Her skin had a slight blue tint and her eyes were larger than those of humans. Captain Washington, we are relieved to see that you are safe, Commander Zara said in perfect English. However, we are deeply troubled by what we observed today. Lisa looked directly into the camera. Commander, what happened to me today does not represent the best of humanity. It represents problems that we are still working to solve. That is precisely what concerns us, Zara replied. You have spent months showing us examples of human progress and potential. But today we saw that some humans still judge others based on genetic characteristics rather than individual merit. Adams leaned forward. Commander, I want to assure you that the officers responsible will face the full consequences of their actions. This incident is being handled at the highest levels of our government. Zara's expression remained serious. Director Adams, we understand that individual humans can behave badly. What troubles us is that this appears to be part of a larger pattern. Our analysis of Earth's data networks shows that similar incidents occur regularly in your society. The aliens had access to human internet communications, news reports, and social media. They could see every case of police brutality, every racist incident, and every example of inequality that occurred around the world. What looked like isolated problems to humans looked like systematic issues to outside observers. You are correct that we still have work to do, Lisa admitted. But I hope you can also see how far we have come. A century ago, someone like me could never have achieved the position I hold today. Change takes time, but it is happening. Commander Zara nodded thoughtfully. Your personal example gives us hope, Captain Washington. But we must consider whether humanity as a whole is ready for the responsibilities that come with galactic citizenship. The conversation continued for another hour as all parties tried to assess the damage and find a path forward. The aliens made it clear that Earth's future among the stars would depend on how well humanity handled this crisis and whether real progress could be made on issues of equality and justice. When the communication ended, Lisa sat quietly for a moment. She realized that her detention in a small-town jail had just become one of the most important events in human history. The federal investigation of the Millbrook Police Department moved swiftly and thoroughly. Within 48 hours, FBI agents had reviewed 5 years of police records, interviewed dozens of citizens, and uncovered a disturbing pattern of racial bias and abuse of power. Officers Danny Burke and Kyle Hayes were arrested at their homes the next morning. Federal marshals served warrants charging them with conspiracy to violate civil rights, falsifying official records, and tampering with evidence. The charges carried potential prison sentences of up to 20 years. Burke's wife cried as agents led her husband away in handcuffs. Their neighbors watched from windows and doorways as the man who had terrorized minority citizens in their community finally faced justice. Hayes lived alone, but his elderly mother called him repeatedly from her nursing home, unable to understand why her son was on the news. Sergeant Pete Morris was suspended pending investigation. While he had not actively participated in planting evidence, federal prosecutors argued that his failure to properly verify Lisa's credentials and his decision to go along with the illegal detention made him complicit in the civil rights violations. Chief Robert Miller held a press conference to announce his immediate resignation. Standing behind a podium with dozens of reporters shouting questions, Miller looked like a broken man. I take full responsibility for the failures of leadership that allowed this incident to occur, he said in a shaking voice. The actions of officers under my command were completely unacceptable and do not represent the values that law enforcement should uphold. The federal takeover of the Millbrook Police Department was swift and comprehensive. The Department of Justice appointed a federal monitor to oversee all operations, while a complete restructuring took place. Every officer would undergo extensive retraining on civil rights, proper procedures, and respectful policing. But the consequences extended far beyond Millbrook. The incident had triggered a nationwide review of police departments with similar patterns of complaints. Federal investigators were dispatched to dozens of small towns where minority citizens had reported unfair treatment by law enforcement. Agent Carol Jung found herself coordinating the largest civil rights investigation in decades. Her office became the command center for operations across multiple states. The goal was not just to punish wrongdoing, but to demonstrate to alien observers that humanity was serious about addressing systematic inequality. Meanwhile, Lisa Washington faced her own difficult decisions about the future. The incident had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. She had dedicated her life to serving her country and protecting humanity's interests. Being treated as a criminal by the very people she had sworn to protect was deeply painful. Director Adams offered her extended leave and psychological counseling. "You've been through a traumatic experience," he said during their private meeting. "No one would blame you for taking time to recover." But Lisa knew that stepping away now would send the wrong message to both humans and aliens. "Sir, if I hide from this incident, it proves that the racism won. I need to show that I cannot be intimidated or broken by ignorant people." Lisa returned to her diplomatic duties with renewed determination. Her next meeting with the Kepler Coalition representatives was scheduled for the following week. She would have to address their concerns directly and honestly, while making the case that humanity deserved another chance. The Alien Coalition had spent days analyzing the incident and its aftermath. They were encouraged by the swift federal response and the prosecution of the officers involved. But they remained concerned about whether this represented real change or just damage control. Commander Zara sent a private message to Lisa before their official meeting. "Captain, your personal strength in this situation has impressed our entire delegation, but we must know whether the response we have seen reflects genuine human progress or simply fear of consequences." Lisa understood the question completely. The aliens needed to know if humans would fight racism and injustice even when no one was watching. Would the reforms in Millbrook last after the federal agents left? Would other police departments change their behavior, or just become more careful about getting caught? The week before the coalition meeting, Lisa decided to do something unprecedented. She requested permission to publicly reveal limited details about her work with alien representatives. She wanted to show both humans and aliens that she would not be silenced by racism. "The public has a right to know that their actions have consequences beyond Earth," she told Director Adams. "If people understood that we are being evaluated by advanced civilizations, maybe they would work harder to become worthy of that evaluation." Adams was initially resistant to the idea. Revealing alien contact was supposed to happen gradually over many years. But he also recognized that extraordinary circumstances might require extraordinary measures. The President herself made the final decision after consulting with her most trusted advisors. Lisa would be authorized to make a carefully crafted public statement that acknowledged alien observation, without revealing specific details about ongoing negotiations. Lisa held her press conference at the Pentagon with the nation's top military and civilian leaders standing behind her. She wore her dress uniform with all her medals and ribbons clearly visible. She looked confident and professional as she faced the cameras. "My fellow Americans," she began, "recent events have reminded us that our actions as a society have consequences beyond our own borders. We are being watched and evaluated by those who will determine our planet's future among the stars." The revelation sent shockwaves around the world. Confirmation that aliens were observing Earth and judging human behavior changed everything. Suddenly, every act of racism or injustice was not just a local problem, but a threat to humanity's cosmic future. Religious leaders, politicians, and ordinary citizens all struggled to understand what this meant. Some people became paranoid about alien surveillance. Others embraced the opportunity to prove that humanity deserved to join a larger galactic community. The officers who had arrested Lisa found themselves the most hated people in America. They had not just committed crimes against an individual, but had potentially damaged humanity's relationship with advanced alien civilizations. Death threats poured in from around the world. Burke and Hayes were moved to protective custody while awaiting trial. Their lawyers tried to argue that they were just following standard procedures and had no way of knowing about their victims' importance. But federal prosecutors had video evidence of their criminal behavior and clear documentation of their racial bias. The trial became a global media sensation. Every day, reporters from dozens of countries packed the courtroom to hear testimony about systematic racism in American law enforcement. The proceedings were broadcast live to audiences who understood that the verdict would send a message to observers from other worlds. Lisa testified for 3 hours about her experience. She spoke calmly and factually about each detail of her detention. When the defense attorney tried to suggest that she had been uncooperative, Lisa's response was devastating. "I served my country for 15 years in some of the most dangerous places on earth," she said. "I have never been arrested or even received a traffic ticket. I was detained solely because officers Burke and Hayes could not believe that a black woman could be a successful military officer." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. Burke was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Hayes received 16 years. Both men would serve their time knowing that their racism had embarrassed humanity in front of the entire galaxy. But the real test was still to come. Lisa's meeting with the Kepler Coalition would determine whether humanity's response to this crisis was enough to maintain their chance at galactic citizenship. 6 months after the incident in Millbrook, Lisa Washington stood in a specially constructed meeting facility hidden deep in the Nevada desert. The room had been designed according to alien specifications to accommodate representatives from 3 different species. Advanced air filtration systems maintained the precise atmospheric conditions needed for the historic conference. Commander Zara of the Altarians sat across from Lisa at a curved table made from materials that did not exist on Earth. To her left was Ambassador Kent from the silicon-based Crystari species, whose body looked like a living sculpture of translucent blue stone. On the right sat Elder Morvac from the aquatic Aquarians, who breathed through gills and required a special water-filled environmental suit. The 3 aliens had been observing Earth for months since the Millbrook incident. They had watched humanity's response with intense interest. Their final evaluation would determine whether Earth was ready to learn about the galactic community or needed more time to mature as a civilization. "Captain Washington," Commander Zara began, "we have completed our assessment of recent events. We asked to meet with you personally because your experience represents both humanity's greatest challenges and its highest potential." Lisa nodded respectfully. She had prepared for this moment through weeks of meditation and study. Everything she said today could determine the future of human civilization. "Commander, I understand that what happened to me raised serious questions about our society," Lisa replied. "I want to address those concerns honestly and directly." Ambassador Kent spoke in a voice that sounded like crystal chimes. "Our species has observed many developing civilizations over millions of years. We have seen promising societies destroy themselves because they could not overcome primitive tribal thinking." Elder Morvac added, "The treatment you received was precisely the kind of behavior that concerns us most. If humans cannot respect their own most accomplished citizens, how can they be trusted with advanced technology or contact with other species?" Lisa took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for since the day she was arrested in that small Georgia town. "You are absolutely right to be concerned," she said. "The racism I experienced is real and it is still a problem in human society. But I want you to understand what has happened since that day." Lisa activated a holographic display that showed data from across the United States. "The federal investigation triggered by my arrest has led to reforms in over 200 police departments. Thousands of officers have undergone new training on civil rights and proper procedures. Dozens of corrupt officials have been prosecuted and removed from positions of authority." The RAM display showed statistics about declining police misconduct complaints and increasing community trust in reformed departments. Lisa had spent months gathering this data to demonstrate real progress, rather than just good intentions. "More importantly," Lisa continued, "the revelation that Earth is being observed by your coalition has changed how many humans think about their behavior. When people understand that their actions have cosmic consequences, they are more motivated to do better. Commander Zara studied the data carefully. These improvements are encouraging, but how do we know they will continue after the immediate crisis passes? Human history shows a pattern of progress followed by regression. Lisa smiled. Because the changes are not just coming from government mandates. They are coming from ordinary people who want humanity to be worthy of galactic citizenship. She showed them videos from schools where children were learning about diversity and inclusion with new urgency. She showed them community meetings where neighbors were working together to address local problems. She showed them businesses and organizations voluntarily adopting higher standards of equality and fairness. The knowledge that we are being evaluated has given many humans a sense of shared purpose that transcends old divisions, Lisa explained. People who might have been indifferent to racism before now see it as a threat to our entire species' future. Ambassador Kent asked, "What about the individuals who arrested you? Do they represent a significant portion of your population?" "Officers Burke and Hayes represent the worst of humanity," Lisa answered. "But they are not the majority. They are failures of our educational and cultural systems that we are working to fix. Most humans, when properly educated and led, choose cooperation over conflict and fairness over prejudice." Lisa paused and looked directly at each alien representative. "I will not pretend that we have solved all our problems. Racism, violence, and inequality still exist on Earth. But we are actively fighting against these problems instead of accepting them as inevitable." Elder Morvac spoke thoughtfully. "Your personal response to unjust treatment has been particularly impressive. Many beings would have become bitter or vengeful after such an experience. Instead, you have used it as motivation to work harder for positive change. That is exactly the kind of behavior that gives us hope about your species," Commander Zara added. "You have shown that humans can grow stronger through adversity rather than being broken by it." The three aliens conferred among themselves in their native languages for several minutes. Lisa waited patiently, knowing that they were making one of the most important decisions in human history. Finally, Commander Zara spoke for the group. "Captain Washington, the Kepler Coalition has decided to continue our relationship with humanity. We will gradually increase contact and begin sharing limited technologies that can help your species address its remaining challenges." Lisa felt a wave of relief and joy wash over her. Humanity had passed the test. The incident that could have destroyed their future had instead become proof of their potential for growth and redemption. However, Ambassador Kent continued, "This decision comes with conditions. Earth will be monitored closely for the next decade. Any significant regression in human rights or social justice could result in contact being terminated." "We understand," Lisa replied. "We will not disappoint you," Elder Morvac added. "Your personal role in these events has earned you great respect among our peoples. You will be remembered as the human who helped bridge the gap between primitive prejudice and galactic citizenship." As the meeting concluded, Lisa thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. From a holding cell in rural Georgia to a diplomatic triumph that secured humanity's future among the stars, she had turned the worst experience of her life into one of the most important achievements in human history. The Millbrook Police Department, meanwhile, had become a model for law enforcement reform. Under federal oversight, the department hired new leadership committed to community policing and racial equality. Officers received extensive training not just in legal procedures, but in empathy, cultural sensitivity, and conflict resolution. Chief Sandra Lopez, a respected law enforcement professional with a track record of successful reforms, took over the department. She instituted community advisory boards, body cameras for all officers, and regular bias training. Crime rates dropped while community trust increased dramatically. The two officers who had arrested Lisa remained in federal prison, their careers and reputations destroyed. But their actions had inadvertently triggered changes that made life better for thousands of people. Their racism had backfired spectacularly, leading to exactly the kind of progress they had tried to prevent. Lisa continued her work as humanity's primary alien liaison, but she also became a powerful advocate for civil rights and social justice. She spoke at schools, universities, and community centers about the importance of treating all people with dignity and respect. "Every act of prejudice is not just wrong in itself," she would tell audiences. "It is a betrayal of humanity's potential to be something greater than our worst impulses." Her story became a powerful symbol of how individual courage and institutional accountability could overcome even deeply rooted problems. Children learned about her experience in history classes. Police academies used her case as an example of how not to conduct law enforcement. Most importantly, the knowledge that humanity was being observed by advanced alien civilizations continued to motivate positive changes throughout society. People understood that their behavior reflected not just on themselves or their communities, but on their entire species. As Lisa looked up at the stars that night, she knew that humanity still had a long way to go. But for the first time in history, they were traveling that path with guidance from civilizations that had already learned to overcome the challenges that Earth still faced. The universe was vast and full of wonders that humans could barely imagine. Thanks to the events set in motion by a racist traffic stop in small-town Georgia, humanity would eventually get the chance to explore those wonders as part of a larger galactic community, committed to justice, equality, and peace.